Hello, and welcome back to the Sunday Surgery on the Marketing for Learning podcast. This is only our second episode of the Sunday Surgery. So for those of you that may have missed the first episode, I would recommend going back and listening to it. It was a fantastic episode. But the Sunday Surgery is your opportunity to come on the podcast and get advice for any engagement or marketing problems you're having in your L&D function. It's as simple as that. This episode of the Sunday Surgery is with Vesta Charleshouse from AMICULUM. Vesta was a delegate on our Marketing for Learning masterclass, and she does have a phenomenal marketing mindset. But we had a great chat about influencers and making the most of what you've already got. So I don't want to spoil the episode for you, so I'll stop talking now. But if you want to be the next person on the Sunday Surgery, feel free to drop us an email on hello@massmarketing.co.uk. So that's hello@marketing.co.uk. Or if you find it easier, just drop myself or Ashley a message on LinkedIn. We would love to have you on the Sunday Surgery. So hello everybody and welcome to the Marketing for Learning podcast. It's a very special episode today. It's our second edition of the Sunday Surgery. And I am joined today by Vesta from AMICULUM. Hi Vesta.
Hi, Hannah.
So Vesta, for those people listening, I know some of your alumni colleagues from the masterclass will know you and recognise your voice. Let everyone know who you are and what you do.
So my name is Vesta Charleshouse. I am a learning coordinator, the company AMICULUM, which is a medical communications company. Essentially, we deal with, pharmaceutical companies and healthcare professionals, that kind of thing. We're only a team of 3 in our little L&D department, and I'm about to abandon them for 9 months.
And for anyone wondering, Vesta is pregnant. She's not just nodding off for 9 months.
Yeah, so and I sort of lean more towards the, I guess you could say, the creative side of things. So when the marketing course came up with you guys, it was really beneficial because we needed it. We had a really poor engagement problem in L&D. So that's how I got to the course, and that's how I'm now here.
Yeah, and I have to just give you like an accolade on the podcast. Like your strategy was phenomenal, Vesta. Like as most people know, I run the masterclass, so I do all the grading, and I actually sent yours to Ashley. I was like, look how good this is. So you definitely have the right way of thinking. And you've done some phenomenal stuff. Like you said, you were struggling with engagement, and that seems to have shifted a bit for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it definitely has. I mean, don't get me wrong, and you guys obviously know there's still problems in L&D marketing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing what you're doing. So we still have a long way to go, but I would say we're definitely on the up, so to speak. It's just maybe a little bit slower than we hoped, but it's getting there.
What kind of things have you tried?
So, in terms of campaigns, it was really useful to understand essentially what we meant by campaigns when we did the course. So originally we had this great master plan where we were like, okay, we're here, we want to get there by this date. And we realized actually that's probably not achievable with one campaign. We needed to realize that we need to do multiple campaigns. So we started utilizing more of our channels. So we're a Microsoft-based company. So we used Fever Engage. We used our internal emails. We decided to get a MailChimp account.
Nice.
The metrics on MailChimp were just a little bit better.
Yeah. I've had one other client that's done that, and it's worked really, really well for them. So I think that's a great route to take there.
Well, it's great for us as well because, like I said, I'm the slightly more creative one of the team, and my colleagues, kind of strategy. Lucy does analytics and that kind of side of things. But MailChimp is so easy to use. So once you got the colours in place, it's like, go on, have fun. So that was one of the reasons that we got it as well. And then we set up like a learning advocates network. So how our company sort of originally worked, it's changed slightly now, but how it originally worked was that within this umbrella, there were a few agencies underneath, and they all basically gave us some volunteers from them to come forward and be like advocates for learning. So if we had something that we wanted to push, that we wanted to get out there, we'd go to the advocates and we'd say, would you mind talking about this in your team meetings? Would you mind dropping the links here and there? Which of course we UTM'd so we could track.
that. It's
Yeah,
almost like you listened during the masterclass.
I know, who'd have thought? Um, so yeah, along with all our other emails and Yammer and things, sorry, I should say Viva Engage. And yeah, we quickly found that as much as I would say the Viva Engage and the emails and stuff had a bigger reach in terms of, you blasted out to the whole company, the engagement from them wasn't as good as peer to peer. So we found that we were getting a higher engagement rate through them, but it was only sort of 11 people and they varied in their position in the company. So some could be just, they've got an interest in L&D, some were part of leadership. So it really depended. And their reach, as much as their engagement was good, their reach just wasn't good enough.
Yeah,
So that kind of has what brought us to this point.
yeah. So essentially, you've tried a lot of stuff. You've seen good impact across the
Mhm,
board. The biggest impact was from that influencer network,
mhm.
and it's kind of like, well, what's the next step? What can we
Yeah,
do next?
exactly.
So I actually have two kind of routes I want to take this conversation based on what you've just said, and obviously we did discuss it before.
Mhm,
There are definitely ways that we can amplify influencers and try to make them more heard. But also, you said that your emails and things on Viva Engage and that didn't resonate so well. And I kind of want to think about how we can make those work a bit better for you as well.
mhm.
Because as you rightly said, the reach is there with things like email and intranets and even Microsoft Teams and sending out message. The reach is much better, but we need to kind of leverage that kind of personal piece that the influencers get, the advocates get.
Mhm,
So tell me a bit more. You said that they were volunteers from all the different agencies within your business.
mhm.
Did they volunteer themselves? Was they coming? How did that work?
How yeah. So I would say that it was maybe a little bit of a mixture.
Mhm.
There were some people that we knew were quite keen on learning. So we almost cherry picked them a little bit. But I would say that the rest maybe were convinced
Okay.
to join in by their sort of line managers.
And then what did you do to engage with them? Like once they'd signed up, whether voluntary or not, what was your process? Was you just sending them stuff and saying, please share this with your network? How did that work?
Yeah, so I've only been working in the L&D department for sort of a year and a half, and we had a big overhaul at the beginning where we looked at the LMS, for example, and we completely overhauled it. And that's when we decided to get the learning advocates on board because we wanted them to test it essentially.
Okay.
Um, so we had like an initial kickoff meeting where we sort of said, "This is our vision. This is what we're trying to do." We knew that we needed to get within the teams because we'd always been kind of like a standalone. We were thought of more as an LMS, like a content provider,
Okay.
than like a development team.
Yeah.
So that was the first barrier we had to get over, and that was part of the L&D network as the Learning Advocates network as well. And then, yeah, we would sort of drip feed them things and we'd say, this week we've got to focus on this that's coming out. There's an event coming out at the end of the month that's going to be around, rare diseases, for example. Can we get you guys on board to talk about these things with your teams? Um, Whether it happened, you could tell when it had happened in some cases because, you obviously could see that particular little group of people all of a sudden they started enrolling in things. But I would say probably of those 11 people, only about maybe 50% of them were actively doing
Yeah.
things. So we know that we could even improve on that team alone.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's a few limitations when it comes to influencers and advocate networks like you're running. And one of the limitations is we all think that's a great idea. Yeah, I can do that. Absolutely. Wait, do you actually think I have the time in reality?
Exactly.
So it's like almost like people promise stuff that they can't actually deliver on. And that is something we just need to accept that, like, if you have 11 people, about half of them, that sounds like a good percentage that have actually engaged. When I run things like focus groups, I deliberately over egg how many people I invite. So I'll invite like 50 people, knowing that I'll probably get between like 15 and 25
Yep.
because something more important always comes up. And that's almost, I'd love to see it change, but it's almost something we have to accept
Mhm.
working in learning, isn't it? Because there's
Yep.
always something more important than us, even though it shouldn't be that way, but it is. So
Mhm.
we just accept it. Um, but also I think there's a big part of marketing to these people, almost proving to them how important they are.
Yeah.
What part are they playing? Because we're all quite egotistical. And
Mhm.
I hope none of your advocates ever listen to this. The people that kind of volunteer for that kind of stuff, probably a little bit more as well. Like we like to do stuff, we like to help stuff. I'm one of these people, so I'm happy to take that on the shoulder. But
Same.
I like to get involved. I like to help people. I like to be seen to do my bit. Like that's who
Mhm,
I am as a person. So if you then said to me like, "Hey, look, actually, by sharing this with your network and encouraging just 5 people to come along, it's going to help them do X, Y, and Z." Kind of
mhm,
tapping into that, like, look how great you are. And we come back to again, and say I still shock myself every time. I don't think I've ever done a podcast about saying this. It comes back to the what's in it for me. What's in
mhm.
it for them to help you? So it's not just about the what's in it for me for the learning
Yeah.
and people getting involved in learning. Like what's in it for your advocate network
Mhm.
to actually get involved with what you want them to do.
Yeah, it's a really good point actually, because obviously we think of that when we're putting out the communications, but when it comes to the network, we are kind of just saying, this is coming up. Could you share this link? Could you do this? And if they are, like, I mean, they're all invariably busy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If you think about like I'm gonna use Superdrug as an example because they sent me one the other day. I bought some bits of Superdrug, then they sent me a link being like, "Please review your experience. You will get 100 bonus points for doing this."
Mhm.
That was like, obviously, we can't do that at work. We can't start giving them money or bonus points and stuff. But there was a clear what's in it for me. They wanted my feedback. They wanted me to do something,
Mhm.
and what's in it for me was they were giving me a whole £1. That's what 100 points
Pretty
equals.
good.
But 100 points sounded way better. Uh, But they were giving me something. So I read the email. If it was just giving me your feedback, I'd be like, "I just bought some makeup. I don't want to give you feedback on that." But you've
Mhm.
offered me something, so there's a what's in it for me. So it kind of hooks me in. And I think when it comes to things like learning, especially where you said some of these are volunteers that are just genuinely passionate about learning,
Mhm.
tapping into that kind of emotional vibe as well. And like, what is it that they're doing? How are they helping the organization? How are they helping their colleagues? That emotional sense of reward definitely, definitely works for them.
Yep.
I also think, is there a way you can simplify the process for them as well? So I know organizations that do things like communications packs. I'm not saying you need to go down that route. They're not learning business partners. It's not their primary role. But within those communications packs, they'll have like an email that they can send and they can just copy and paste it and add their name at the.
Mhm.
They would have banners and things like that that just make their life a little bit easier. Maybe it's just an email signature, so they don't actually have to tell anyone about it. They've just got a
Mhm.
banner in their email signature so that whenever they email someone, people see it. And little things like that just to make it kind of take the cognitive load out of actually
Mhm.
doing the do and having to think about it. And then things like as well, like getting them to record videos that you can then share. If you share it on Viva Engage and tag them in it, can you do that on Viva Engage?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, you can do.
tag them in it, and then people in their teams and that will see it and interact. And then they're not actually doing the posting. You're
Mhm.
just saying like, "Hey, look at what Joe from the finance team said." And
Mhm.
it's still getting that amplification, but you're almost taking the weight off of them a little bit. I
Yep.
think little things like that then dispersed amongst, "Hey, can you please promote this to your network?"
Mhm.
Make the process easier for them, which makes them more likely to want to get involved. So if those 6 that wasn't engaging out of your 11 see that actually you're doing quite a bit of it as well, and it's not that much time commitment from them,
Mhm.
they'll be more likely to engage as well. But
Yeah.
ultimately, it comes back to that what's in it for me, I think.
Yeah, because we did think about templates and stuff, and then we thought, should it be coming from their voice? But yeah, maybe we revisit to
And there is
putting down
something
something else.
so important about the authentic voice as well. But I
Mhm.
think sometimes, like we've all been there, the blank page syndrome, when
Mhm.
we're sat there like, I know what I want to say, but I can't think of the words. So even if it was like a template, like you said, like a little boilerplate of make sure you cover these 3 points, or these are the 3 points we want you to share, you choose how you share them.
Yeah.
That just kind of takes a bit of the thought process out of it because, like, even just this morning, I was working on a client project and I was like, I know exactly what I need that page to say. I just couldn't get the words out. It was one of those blocker moments. I was like, I know what I needed to say. And everything I wrote, I was like, it's not quite right.
Mhm.
And I do communications essentially for a living. So these people that are doing it on the side of their desk, it's going to be a bit harder, isn't it? So anything we can do to take that pain away I think definitely.
Mhm. Okay. Well, it kind of sort of ties into one of the other. It's not a drawback really, because I think anyone from any level can get involved in L&D, and they should. But I think some of the ones who are maybe more passionate and have that little bit of free time as well, perhaps don't feel the confidence to be able to sort of do these kind of posts because they feel like they're not part of the leadership team, they're not part of the management team. So that sort of leads into our next group that we want to target, which is the leaders and the managers,
Yeah, it's interesting though,
and
because
getting their
in my
buy-in.
experience, those more junior, and I was trying to say this on a masterclass yesterday that I was running, and I don't want to word it like this, but I can't think of another way. Those normal employees that aren't a leader, that aren't anybody like super, super high profile, really well known, they actually get probably more traction because it's like, I noticed that girl from the office. I'm going to
Mhm,
click play. Who is
mhm,
she? I know nothing about her. I've never spoken to her.
mhm,
That kind of curiosity about people we don't know much about actually instigates people wanting to watch things like influencer videos. So maybe that's when, instead of saying like, "Hey, can you share this with your network?" Maybe it's a, "Let's record a quick video."
mhm.
And with videos, it doesn't need to be anything fancy. It could be like how we're doing it now, sitting on Zoom. It
Yep.
could be just on your phone, quick and dirty, really, to
Mhm,
say, "Hey, we've got this new opportunity," or "I've just taken part in this and it was really, really beneficial for me. These are the reasons I think you should get involved," and post it.
mhm.
That kind of thing works, probably more so when it is a normal employee. If anyone listening to this can think of a better phrase than normal employee, I'd really appreciate it. But it's like if I send you an email, I'm the head of learning, and I send you an email saying, "This is the best learning course I've ever seen in my life. It's gonna change your life. You should take it today." You're gonna be like, "Well, yeah, of course you'd say that. It's your work. It's your team's work.
Yeah,
It's got like
it's
you've
your
got a
job to do
vested
that.
interest in it."
Yeah.
Where if it's just Joe Bloggs that works in finance, it's just that bit more authentic and a bit more
Mhm,
believable. So, as much as I agree, we do need to get stakeholder buy-in and we do need to get leadership, and sometimes, like, there are certain employee groups that will definitely wait for their leader to tell them to do something. So, we
mhm.
still need to
Yeah,
do that, but don't dismiss those people that can kind of do that real authentic peer to peer. Because if
yeah.
your friend said to you, "Hey, like, this course was great, you should take it," you're more likely to go and take it.
Mhm.
Because why would your friend or close colleague recommend something that was a waste of time?
Yeah, very good
So,
point.
there's definitely a closer buy-in there
Mhm.
with, and I'll say it again, normal employees.
I
Uh,
guess there's a slightly more human, less corporate voice
yes,
from them as well.
yes, absolutely, and
Mm,
it it just does come across a bit more authentic because obviously leaders in the business, if your messaging's about how it's gonna be really beneficial for you,
mhm.
we're all probably sitting there watching it thinking, "Yeah, of course you'd say that because, you've probably got shares or you're on a big paycheck and you want the business to be more profitable, so you really want me to be productive for the business, not for me."
Yeah.
So, like, that, and look, I might just be a massive cynic, but I've seen it in many organizations now, and I've seen the leadership stuff work as well.
Mhm,
But that real kind of influencer, because if we think about why influencers work in the wild, away from L&D, it's because they're meant to be somewhat relatable or aspirational to people.
mhm.
So, like, when you've got, like, people reviewing, I don't know, Mrs. Hinch doing the cleaning stuff, it's like, "Oh, look, she's cleaning her kitchen like the rest of us," or you've got people doing, like, hair products or beauty products. You kind of gravitate towards the people that you're like, "Oh, I'm like them," or "I want to be like them."
Mhm.
And as much as the leaders are probably the "I want to be like them," we need that level of, "Hey, I'm just your colleague. I'm just like you. I've done this and you can do it too." Like real relaxed, really just authentic. I think that's a real big thing.
Mhm.
If any kind of advocate network, influencers, anything like that, authenticity is key.
Mhm.
I think also, and I know you said that some of your people were kind of convinced to join. I would also recommend trying to expand that network somewhat, because how
I was just
big's,
gonna ask that.
yeah,
Should we be looking to expand it?
how big's your target audience?
So we're about 320.
Okay. And you've got 11 advocates.
Mm,
It's not a bad percentage though, is it? If we think about it. But I think if you're struggling to get everybody to engage every time,
mhm,
maybe just expanding that network a little bit further, or maybe just getting people involved on like a really small thing to start with. So, for
mhm,
example, one of my clients at the moment is doing a whole campaign about what learning really means at their organisation. It's baked into their DNA. It's one of their values, and they're a huge organisation. But instead of like getting people to go, "Oh, go and take this learning," we've asked all the influencers to give their like best piece of advice about learning.
mhm,
So, there's a probably I think we've got about 10 of them back so far. We've asked about 50 people, which again shows the odds of actually getting these things back.
yep,
But I think we've got about 10 so far of different people just giving, like, their different advice about how to get involved in learning, and it
mhm,
probably took them all about half an hour each. So, it's quite a small commitment to actually get someone to start thinking about how they promote learning and that. So, maybe you've got your key 11 that have agreed and have been working with you for a while, but maybe, like, expand that a little bit further to different people in different teams
mhm.
and see how they can help you kind of promote your offering a bit more.
Yeah, I think as well. So we're like I said, we've got the various agencies within. We're all coming together now anyway into one
Okay.
big pot. So yeah, I think there's probably a scope for us to start spreading out. Maybe actually ask for volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely, like, asking people to get involved, and also, what's the worst that they can say? No.
Well,
Okay,
exactly. No, no, I'm too
so
busy. So yeah.
exactly. So, I know you've been working on a lot of campaigns and things like that.
Mhm.
What's the next big campaign, and how are you using your advocate network for that?
Oh, that's a great question. We're actually in a bit of a sort of transition period at the moment. In that certain things within our L&D department, so for example, the LMS is up for renewal.
Okay.
All these
It's always
things,
a fun time.
conversations are yeah. Well, I'm away, of course. Woohoo!
Yeah, it will be fun for you.
So, but obviously, with the advent of all the different things that AI can do,
Mm,
we're kind of overhauling the way that I think we reach out to loads of people, moving away from just content supplier, which is historically what has been our role, moving more into skills development and the soft skills, that type of thing, which arguably doesn't really need like an LMS. So moving away from that idea of just if you've got 10 minutes, go to the LMS, do this Rise module or
yeah.
whatever, where realistically you're not then gonna learn anything from it because in a week's time you'll have forgotten it.
Yeah, I think it's quite an interesting shift. I remember when I first got into the L&D world, everyone was like, bite-sized learning, micro learning. It
Mhm.
must be an e-learning course that's less than 10 minutes and you must be able to do it on your phone. And that's never been the be all and end all of learning, has it? And in recent, I'd say probably last 6 to 12 months, I've had more and more conversations with people being like, learning doesn't have to be formal.
Yeah, exactly.
That then still doesn't mean we don't need to market it though, because
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
just ignore the informal kind of opportunities that they can get involved with, or so much of learning is about reflection and application.
Mhm.
If they're not aware that that conversation they just had with a colleague is actually hugely beneficial for them, they
Yeah.
might never think about it again. So, how can we really change the narrative of what learning is?
Mhm.
And again, with your organization, I think expanding that advocate network and just getting people to think about it and talk about it
Yeah,
at the point
definitely.
where you're coming together as one organization. I assume you were quite siloed before in your agencies.
Yeah, definitely. And now it's breaking open all those walls that have been put up. So, yeah, I think definitely it's our messaging needs to kind of address some of the fear as well that I think and offer reassurance. Because I think if we do go down this route of using more learning the flow of work, that kind of thing, and the practice activities, it's breaking people out of their comfort zones. When we ran a survey last year, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, I want more practical activities." But when it came to it, you would find that if there was like a role play activity that suddenly came out, they'd be like, "Oh no,
They do want to
bye,"
do it. Yeah.
and they disappear into a hedge.
Yeah. It's that Homer gif, isn't it, of everyone walking back?
It's completely, yeah, just disappears into the background.
Oh, yeah, and it's
So,
interesting, and I suppose that's something that you'll learn over time, and I know you've created personas and you've done that research, and this is why we say, like, it's always important to keep abreast of, are they still accurate?
mhm,
Because Your people told you, I want more practical stuff. I want more role play. And then it came to it and they were like, no, thank you.
No, don't want
I
it.
don't want to do that. And it's almost like that difference between what people say they want and need versus what they actually want and need. And
Yeah.
it's always the argument of time as well, the pain point of
Mhm.
time. I don't have the time. Well, you kind of do, don't you? It's
Mm.
just how you choose to use it. You don't want to make time for learning, and that's also fine. Then that's our job to persuade them otherwise.
Yeah.
So it's really thinking about those pain points and seeing how they evolve over time. But I think also where you are in the crux of getting everyone together for the first time, it's almost like a fresh start for you, isn't it? Of
Yeah.
how learning should be. And I said earlier that I wanted to talk about those emails that you did. And obviously, using MailChimp, you've got so much more possibility
Mhm.
um, than most organizations that just have to use Outlook or Gmail.
Yeah.
So you said that you didn't feel like they had more reach, but didn't get as much impact. What
Mhm.
did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I definitely think there's a lot of because Mailchimp is relatively new to us,
Mhm.
so we definitely need to dive into it. We're not A/B testing, for example, yet,
Okay.
so I know that we can do things there. So what we're finding is across all of our channels, we definitely know that certain people respond to different communication. You have a preference. So
Mhm.
yes, we've got Viva Engage. Yes, it goes out to the entire company, but I would say that maybe only a third of the company actively use it.
Okay.
Everyone else, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, I know it's there, but it's social. I don't want to use it, sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Fair.
And then when it comes to things like Mailchimps and sending out the e-blasts and stuff, we've just got to make sure we're not flooding the inboxes because then we get the people are too busy, back
Yeah.
off. But yeah, in terms of Mailchimp, we're trying to keep it sort of shorter emails, usually around a theme. So October's quite a big month for inclusion. You've got Black History
Yep.
Month. There's quite a lot on neurodiversity going on this month.
Yep.
So we're doing a sort of email to the management teams to say, look, this is what's happening this month. Think about maybe reaching out to your line reports and just offering support, that kind of thing, because you just
Yeah.
don't know what's going on. But quite short, a few resources, few links to videos and stuff that we found, little short blasts, and just trying to get the message across of support and inclusion. But I wouldn't say we're not using it massively regularly. I'd say
Mhm.
maybe once a month if we
Okay.
are using it. Um, and that I'm sure there's stuff we can do with it. I'm
Yeah,
sure there is.
absolutely. And look, like I said, it's a little bit of a dream of mine that one day every L&D team will have a marketer and they'll be using marketing tools. And I know you've still got your L&D role, but you're like so close to there that makes me so happy. Um, what I would do if I was in your position right now is I think once a month sounds okay. I'd probably maybe go once every 2 weeks. So you're getting a little bit more traction.
Mhm,
And I'd be really taking note of what works and what doesn't. So, like you said, you've not been A/B testing. You can still see from the emails you have sent what ones have worked better, what kind of subject lines have worked better in terms
mhm,
of your open rates, and you can see all of that information on Mailchimp. So that's the blessing of using an email
mhm,
platform that you can see that difference between open rate and click through rate. If your click through rate's really low, but your open rate's really high, what did you do wrong in the inside of the email? If your open rate's low, but the click through rate's really high, the subject line was your problem. So just look at things like that. There is no, and I've seen a lot of advice recently. I actually read something yesterday that was trying to tell people what time of the day to send out an email to get the most opens. And it's just a load of old codswallop. Like that's not how it works. Your audience is so unique. Like you can't know that unless you test it. And some
mhm,
platforms, I'm not sure if MailChimp has this, but they do start thinking about when people are more likely to open emails. And you can sometimes schedule that with the use of technology of after you've sent like 5 or 6 emails, it will work out the best time of day to send an email to that person based on when they opened your previous. So there's really, really complex tech that we could use to do that. But take note and check what's working for your audience.
mhm,
But then also think about the user data you're getting from that. So, if you have people, for example, say you sent out an email to your entire audience and you had 3 call to actions in it, and you deliberately crafted that so each call to action was related to a different persona,
mhm,
see what people click on. Use that as a bit of evidence. Are they that persona? Does that put them into that bucket? Because when you're using email platforms like MailChimp, you can then create lists based on that. So say you had a video on one topic, article on another, and I don't know, podcast on a third topic. If people only ever click on your podcasts, well, then you can create a real crafted list of avid podcast listeners that you can engage with your learning through sending them relevant content based on their preference of podcasting.
Mhm.
If it's a particular topic that they keep clicking on, you can start noticing this kind of insight from your audience quite quickly. And you
Mhm.
have the ability to look at that and go, okay, so the people that clicked on this, I might send them a follow up email. Because if you think about the world that we live in, we can't go on a website that has our email address without them emailing us after. And I thought that was gone because the cookie thing changed in July. It hasn't. I still get it. I don't know if they're breaking the law or what. I still get emails after I've landed on a website and I'm like, oh, you're stalking me. And I'm a
Yeah.
marketer and it makes me feel
Yeah,
like,
that's a good point. I still get that.
yeah, I don't know. I kind of showing my lack of awareness and understanding what was going on with Google Analytics, but I really thought that had gone. Um, but that kind of thing you can do in a much more human way and a less stalkerish way. If you realise that, say, 100 people clicked through
Mhm.
to do a particular course, you could send them a follow up that has maybe like a bite out of that course. So, like, hey, how did you find I don't know, let's
Mhm.
say we're talking about project management and you're like, "Have you explored Prince 2?" Like, something
Mhm.
really relevant to what they've already clicked through. And that builds that relationship. Because if you think about when you meet somebody and you tell them something about yourself, when you see them next and then they repeat that back to you, or they're like, "Oh, how did that go?" You're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, they remembered me. Oh, that's" it makes you feel good. It gives you, like, a little sense of boost and, like, importance.
It's funny that you say boost because we're looking into something quite similar at the moment, which we're calling boost.
Oh, wow.
Sort
What's
of
that?
like basically following up with people. So let's say we've run a workshop on something and then putting in a communication plan which gives them a boost like, this is what we discussed last week. Step one was this. How are you getting on?
Yeah.
Something that's just short and just a reminder almost, but sort of boosts their confidence rather
Yeah.
than nudges them to do something.
And it's so interesting because this again is a way that marketing and learning are so similar.
Mhm.
Need to keep and like we've spoken about it a lot on the podcast, nudging them down that funnel from
Mhm.
awareness because we've got an awareness problem in L&D. People don't know our learning exists, all the way through to taking action and then being loyal advocates.
Mhm.
You wouldn't if you were a good learning designer, just create a piece of learning, get them to complete the e-learning and say, "Well, my job's done." Like that's not the whole learning experience, is it? We all know that in L&D. The
Mhm.
same applies to marketing. How can we keep just reminding people, nudging them,
Mhm.
just going like, "Hey, look, you did this and remember?" It helps you stay front of mind, and I think integrating that into your marketing as well. I love the idea of that boost concept that you just said, like putting that tool in place for the learning, but how can you factor that into the marketing as well? Now you've got the technology to do it. Having
Mhm.
that email platform is truly a game changer, and I know not everybody listening to this would be able to do that.
Mhm.
You can still work out some of this stuff and A/B test your emails and work out what subject lines get more impact for you as an organization
Mhm.
when you're using things like Outlook and Gmail. But with Mailchimp, you can really level it up and really, really get some great impact from that.
Mhm. I guess for Outlook and things though, you can use the reaction button and get
Yeah.
people to engage that way if you ask them,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
thumbs
That's a
up
great
if you like this or something.
Yeah.
Sorry, just thinking.
No, that's a really great
If you
idea.
didn't
I
have
love
MailChimp,
that.
that's one way you can do it.
Yeah, because and to be
Mhm.
honest, they come through even if it goes back to a not Outlook email address as well. I
Mhm.
often get emails, we're on Gmail, and I get like a, "This person has reacted to your email. How did they do that?" And then realize it's an Outlook
Where
thing.
did they find that button?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but with MailChimp, we haven't. So we've segmented our audience, you know, based on we're not. So the companies we don't have roles as such,
Mhm.
so that people can develop in any direction they choose to go in, really.
I love that.
So that's kind of how we're based. But there is like levels of, you know, you have to make assumptions. So the line manager's obviously going to get line managers' emails
Mhm.
and that kind of thing. So we've segmented that way, but we've not thought to truly stalk.
Yeah. And look,
And that's a really good idea,
there is
actually.
a big element of stalking in
Mhm.
marketing, but it's not stalking in like, "Oh, it's a bad thing," and I know we all get annoyed by remarketing at times.
Mhm.
Like, I'm sure I talk about stuff and it must be my phone must be listening to me because I don't
Oh,
understand
completely.
how I end up with the same advert, like, minutes after I've spoken about it. Fun side story here is my friend came round with those, trip cans, so it's the CBD infused stuff, and I was like, "Oh, I've
Mhm.
never seen them before," and I never said the brand name, like, when I was talking to my husband, I was like, "Oh, Charlotte's left them in the fridge," and then the next day I got an advert from them. I'm like, "No, how can you see into my fridge? I don't understand." Um,
The the annoying thing is, though, when you want it to listen and suggest a thing that you can't remember what it was, it doesn't get it.
no. If only it got better and stalked us more. But as much as we laugh and we joke and we sometimes get annoyed about remarketing, it's not stalking. It's
Mhm.
really truly understanding who your audience are.
Mhm.
And obviously you've done that first step of developing out your personas, just understanding your audience as much as you
Mhm.
can. But things like this add to the knowledge we have. It's a new data set. It's our audience telling us through their actions another thing about them.
Mhm.
If, for example, you sent out an email that was click through to our LMS and take this course, and that got barely any click throughs, but signing up to a program got loads of click throughs from a particular audience. That's a data set. You can see the difference there of like, oh, there might be some other caveats. Maybe you sent it at a different time of day, a different time of year, because obviously, well, we're in October now, September flew by, but it was only a matter of weeks ago that most people were on summer holidays
Mhm.
and we wasn't getting much traction from anything we did at work, regardless of marketing and how good the marketing was. It was quiet because people were off on holiday.
Mhm.
But we can still use these kind of cues that we're getting from the data to say, "Oh, okay, this tells us something about this audience." So if you sent out a line manager email and it got a higher click-through rate than one that you sent to everybody else, what does that tell you? What does it tell you about the tools they're using? We did the ADL model, and I think I've spoken about it on the podcast, but it's definitely in our new ebook about that. Where are people hanging out at each stage?
Mhm. Yeah.
Using email, using Viva Engage, things like that, and looking at the data that it's giving you is a great way to kind of start to understand your audience more. And I think understanding your audience to that level, then when you go, "Well, what's in it for them?" It's so much easier to answer it. And you're gonna get such a more accurate answer because you finally start to understand these people
Mm.
and what they're actually doing versus what they're saying they want, because we know
Mhm.
people are liars.
Yeah.
So we've kind of covered a multitude of topics today, haven't we, Vesta? We've gone
Mhm.
from the advocate network and how you can utilize that kind of influencer style stuff. We spoke about Viva Engage. Viva Engage is just like Facebook, isn't it? And I think sometimes people can overthink that. But also your email marketing, and you're so lucky to be having MailChimp in your function. I think it's phenomenal. I'd love to have you back on the podcast and maybe let's give you a year and a half after, going off for your maternity leave for 9 months, but see how that's actually working for you guys. I think the key things that you could do that will really help you boost engagement, because as I've said, you've already started, you've been implementing phenomenal marketing tactics and they have been working for you. I would try to expand that advocate network in some way, probably even more so given that the free agencies are coming together and, you've got an almost new audience. It's gonna be a different vibe, isn't it? And a different culture with all of you being together. So I'd definitely
Mhm.
look at that. I'd also look at maybe aside from the advocate network, thinking about influencer marketing. So people that can just get involved one time. They're not committing to a long-term agreement with you, but they might
Mhm.
record a quick video or give a quick quote or do a testimonial, that kind of thing. You use them, especially where you're merging. You're gonna
Mhm.
have different faces, so people are gonna like that familiarity of, "Oh, I remember that person that I used to work with. I'm happy that I'm still seeing them." So it's probably a really good time for you to be using influencers.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to your emails, just keep testing and look at what that behavioral data you're getting from it as well. It's so unique that somebody in L&D has the ability to be able to see that behavioral data s- so firsthand, because you send
Mhm.
the email to someone, you can see what that person has done. A lot of us have to play a guessing game with emails. You have that data to hand, so keep testing and look back at that data and see what the story it's telling you and how you
Mhm.
can use that information to make your further marketing tactics even more effective. So,
Mhm.
said at the beginning that the emails haven't got as much traction as you would like them to. Go back, look at what worked, look at what didn't. See if
Mhm.
there was one that had a little bit of a spike over another. What was it about that email that
Yeah.
helped you get that little spike? Because email is, as much as it's a crowded resource, I don't know about you, I can not look at my email for a day and come back to have nearly 100 emails. It's ridiculous. It is noisy, and our entire target audience feel exactly the same. So we don't want to overload them, but that means that when we do send an email, we want it to be perfect. We want it to
Mhm.
be as attention grabbing as possible. So think about how you can slice and dice your list so it's not just all employees all the time or not just all managers, how you can actually tweak and tailor that to really grab attention and personalize those emails as much as possible. So
Mhm.
that'd be like my top 3 tips for you going forward
Yeah,
with
they're
marketing
brilliant tips.
learning. Um, I've loved having a chat with you.
Thank you.
No surprise, because I used to love having you on the masterclass. I missed you on the last cohort. Um, but honestly, Vesta, you're doing some incredible, incredible marketing for learning stuff. And I genuinely think it's like an example to other learning professionals. So we sit here a lot on the podcast, and I know people think, oh, well, that's easy for you to say, Hannah, you're not doing an L&D job on top of marketing. And no, I'm not. Marketing is my complete focus. But you're proving that it can be done. And yes, it's small steps, like you said, maybe you've not got as far as you wanted, as quickly as you wanted, but we've got to be realistic in what
Mhm.
we can do. And you're definitely moving in the right direction, which I absolutely love.
Yeah, no, and I honestly thank you guys as well for even having the podcast to begin with.
We love the podcast. It's one
We
of our
learned a lot
favorite
from that
things.
podcast.
I love that. And hopefully people start learning a lot from these Sunday surgeries as well. The fact that people like you can come along with any problem and let's spitball it. So for you, your problem was very, I just need to get that engagement up across the board. I've done some
Mm,
stuff. What can I do that's more? Obviously, in the first session, we had a branding conversation about naming a new learning platform.
mhm.
There are so many different ways that marketing thinking can help L&D, and we just wanna help. We're kind of nice like that, if I do say so myself.
Thank you very much.
So, Vesta, thank you so, so much for joining me today. I've
Thank
absolutely
you,
loved
Hannah.
talking to you, and hopefully we'll see you on the podcast again soon with baby in arms.
No, I'll pawn it off.
Thanks, Vesta.
Thanks, Hannah. Bye.